Hi, Dr. Dan Miller. The title is right. Coffee and windshield. I've had too much coffee. I've had too much windshield time. And the person who's going to pay the consequences of that besides me is going to be you. So, a couple of quick minutes about something that I doggone find extremely important as a result of the coffee and windshield time from earlier this morning. I'm going to use a word I don't often use, and hardly anybody who ever talks about leadership tends to use this word because it's seen as anathema, and that's the word manage. We'll come back to that in a second. Here's where I'd like you to go with me for just a couple of minutes, and thanks for being with me. Um, Mental awareness and eyesight. Let's go to the summer of 1776. This is where I'm at right now with Americanism, Redux. I hope you've had a chance to read them, or some of them, or whatever of them. Um, so when the Declaration of Independence is written and edited and re-edited and then finally approved, there's a mental awareness that the British have launched a large force from England, an armed force that's coming across the ocean and whose goal is the defeat and destruction of the Union and the American cause. They've got thousands of soldiers and they're headed our way. Best guess, educated guess, is New York City. They're mentally aware of that in the writing, editing, approving of the Declaration of Independence by the time we hit early July. You go forward only 6 weeks, and now we have written and edited and approved a second draft of the Articles of Confederation. This is the mechanism, not the rhetoric, not the big words, but the mechanism, the nuts and bolts of how the Union will operate now that it's a standalone, separate, and independent entity. But they're no longer simply mentally aware of this powerful force somewhere on the ocean. Now it's all eyesight. There's 96 ships packed around New York Harbor, and at any hour of any day coming up, the invasion will begin. There's just no question. 32,000 soldiers on the 96 ships that are standing like wild dogs with their jaws salivating and so on off the port of New York, ready to just lunge into the inland and start the invasion. So we've gone from mental awareness, yeah, we know it's out there, to eyesight. It is in our front yard and it's going to jump any second. So there's a difference. What do you how do you handle that difference? When it's a question of the mental awareness, it seems to me you're trying to convince people and educate and persuade people to see in their mind's eye what you see in your mind's eye, to make them mentally aware so that they can kind of get their arms around it and embrace whatever vision or idea you have that you're trying to convey. That's mental awareness. That's the boats on the sea. But eyesight, very different story. The boats are in front of us. The guns are in front of us. The soldiers are with their bayonets and artillery are in front of us. And it's going to happen any minute. Now what do? We're not mentally aware. We don't need to be mentally aware. Your eyes see it. The question now is not so much conveying what you see in your mind's eye, because everybody sees it. Now the question is, how do we get our arms around this gargantuan threat and danger that's going to start coming at us any minute? So that's where the word manage comes in. You have to help people manage this thing that their eyes see, so that it's not that they're just seeing all of this gigantic threat, but they see that it can be piecemealed, parted and parceled out, step at a time, task at a time, a day at a time. You're helping them manage that and seeing it as smaller pieces that they can tackle and overcome. That's very different than trying to get them to imagine through mental awareness the existence of a grand thing that they can't see. So those are two very different realities for oftentimes the same individual leader. Um, we'll use one example. George Washington is in both situations. He's trying to help people understand the scale of the threat, the scale of what they're going to have to try to do when this as yet unknown number of soldiers are still on the ocean. Very different task compared to the 96 ships with 32,000 soldiers 2 miles away. So just came to me this morning. I felt like that's a very important point. On the one hand, in mental awareness, you're trying to help people envision what they can't see. On the other hand, with eyesight, you're trying to help them parcel out and break into smaller pieces all the things they can see all too well. So that's where we are. Little historical note. I've been yelling and screaming, and I'll continue to yell and scream about how the war is a new reality that is every bit as important and maybe more important from a daily experience perspective than any of the great books that people had read and consulted and pored over in writing the Declaration and various and sundry other important documents of 1776. Those books, Locke and Montesquieu and Harrington and Aristotle and the Bible for that matter, and others too. Those books are obviously incredibly important, but the war is a book too. It has endless pages, endless words, all written in blood, and they have an impact that goes beyond our traditional understanding of what affects the revolution in 1776. You want to know two quick examples of The War as a great book? When they write the Declaration and approve it, they don't sign it until 4 weeks later. And they keep the signatures secret. Nobody knows, aside from Charles Thompson as the clerk, whose name is on it, and John Hancock as the president or president, whose name is on it. Nobody knows what other names are even on it, and they won't know for months. So the war compels that to be true. The other thing is that the Articles of Confederation are written in two drafts from late June on into finally its adoption by the Continental Congress to be sent to the states by mid-August, later to mid-August. So we're talking about 6 weeks roughly, 6 to 7 weeks. The war will not stop and let them have time to consider and contemplate and debate in peace and serenity and so on. By comparison, the Declaration had that time. The Articles did not, and they deserve our respect for having drafted that body called the Articles of Confederation, because they do it as they're dealing with war on an hourly basis. I'm Dr. Dan Miller, Historical Solutions LLC. Hey man, thanks for hanging out with me. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you very soon after some coffee and windshield time.